Time management.
Organization, very similar. Yeah. So I have some data. Usually it's a big bar graph up here. It's from the 2022 National Association of College Employers survey. Right. So what they do is they survey all the employers that are a part of this organization. It's a very big organization. I'm a part of it. Right. A couple thousand companies that they reach out to. So they ask, what are the top skills that you're looking for? Right. So the top skill of 2022 is actually problem solving skills. Right. They wanted people that can solve problems. And so I want you to think about that. You know, some of you have had military experience. Some of you are actively in the military right now, whether it's reserves or, service, right? And some of you have had other experiences that are going to be relevant to this. But I want you to think about a time that you worked to solve a problem. I want you to keep that in your mind. The next skill that employers are looking for, matter of fact, it was 78.6% of the respondents. They were looking for analytical quantitative skills, right? So they need problem solving skills, but they need problem solving skills that potentially are going to involve numbers, right? So think about a time that you've worked on a problem that involved numbers. You're in engineering, you're doing this actively, probably working with it. Right? The next one is teamwork, 76.3%, so just a little bit less. They want to know that you can work with a group of people to solve a problem that's probably going to involve numbers. Those three things with a group of people. Yeah.
In high school, I'm a freshman, so a lot of my experience is a little bit younger, but in high school, I got a chance to perform my own research project as part of the program I was in. So I got to interview a lot of different people and perform my own experiments in the lab. So I have the option to publish that.
That's great. Is that on your resume?
Yeah.
Great. One of the things that I hear from students, doesn't matter if we're talking first year students or seniors or graduates. Yeah, I did that project. It was for class. I didn't think I could put it on my resume because I didn't think employers would find that interesting or relevant. I thought they were looking for experiences that I've had in the past that I got paid for. That's incorrect. They're looking for skills. So if you have an experience where you demonstrated these skills, it's important to talk about. It's fair game for your resume, right? That's why I really like projects that are done here at Purdue, because those are projects, even if you've not had an internship, part-time job, full-time job, doesn't matter. You're probably demonstrating those top three things with your group of people, even if it's good or bad. Right? Sometimes group work ain't great, right? Communication is number 4, so you're right. Written communication. Why is written communication important? Why do you think employers would want you to be able to communicate through writing?
Need to be able to understand like what people are saying.
Yeah. Get your point across.
Yeah. I would say communication between teams as well.
Yeah.
Like you're not always meeting face.
Yeah. Absolutely.
That's it. Big one is a lot of, not everybody got all the time, all day, every day to make a conversation on the phone. So able to get that written communication across that's the modern way to do it.
Well, that brings me to what is the form of communication that's going to involve writing? Emails, yeah. Right. Has anybody ever got an email before and you read it and you're like, boy, yeah. All the time I get those emails, right? And so if you can write effectively and communicate information effectively, especially if it involves the work that you did with the team to solve a problem that involved numbers, right? Then you bring those skills. And I want you to think about this: cover letters. Cover letters are writing samples, right? So keep that in mind, especially as you're thinking about this application process of these companies. If they straight up tell you, do not send a cover letter, don't send one, right? But if they leave it open and they give you the ability to submit one, I recommend submitting one. It's also context, right? So writing samples, you can demonstrate that skill, but also to give them context. Initiative is number 5, right? Think about this. If you're working someplace, your boss can't stand behind you all day, do every minute of the day. A, that would be horrible for you. B, it's not time for that. Okay? And so they need to know that you can self-start. And how do you talk about that? How do you show that? There's all kinds of different ways. If you took initiative to do a project on your own and then write about it, that's a great example. right? And you take initiative every single day, right? Just how you talk about it, how you communicate it, right? Do you communicate effectively, right? Work ethic is the last, right? Work ethic was number 6. These employers want you to have strong work ethic. Now, I want you to think about where you're at. You're at Purdue University. Purdue University is hard work, right? Who's had to work really hard academically? Yeah. Everybody in this room, just about, right? They come here thinking about you all as hard workers already. Okay? And the thing is, you all go out into internships and full-time jobs, and blow them away with that work ethic. They see it all the time. Northrop Grumman is a company that I work pretty closely with. Lockheed's another one. R&R, Rolls-Royce is another one. They're all really happy working with you all. Northrop Grumman, to quote, is thrilled because you all get paid, right? You know, the people that I'm working with at Northrop are doing stuff out of White Sands. So they're going to look at you and talk. But that being said, once you get out there, they're really just shocked at how much you all pour into work that's being done. So that's why they come in and recruit 130 people. It's the same with Pepsi. They typically recruit about 90 people a year. Right? That's full-time and internships. Amazon, the same thing, about 110, 115, it just depends. Right? And so these companies know that you have a strong work ethic. You just got to be able to talk about it. So next will be attributes. Different from skills, right? Skills are things that you can demonstrate. Attributes are things that you just have. Experiences too. You can have an experience that attributes to your ability. So the top attribute that employers are looking for across all industries is previous experience with their company. So we get into like the circular logic thing where if I don't have experience to work there, how do I get a job to get experience to work there? Okay. That's why number 2 is so important. And that's internship experience within that industry. Say you want to go work at Tesla, or you want to get an internship there. But you apply and you don't get selected and you don't get an interview. But then you go apply to all of the other major automotive manufacturers in the United States and even some of the tier 2 ones, right? These will be companies that are making parts for the companies that make the car. And you get a job there. Internship, you got great experience, you come back the next year and you apply to that internship at Tesla. Well, now you've got internship experience within that industry. They're going to be way more interested in you, right? So if you don't get into that dream job, that dream situation the very first time, do not fret. Go out there and find something that's close to it, work on that. Now, the other piece is research, right? We know there's a lot of research conducted on this campus. Some of it's very relevant to what you might want to do. Some of it may not be relevant, but it's very close to that internship experience in some ways. So if you're finding it difficult to get into internship situations, start looking for research situations on campus. Now, the way to do this is pretty straightforward. Talk to your faculty members. Stick around after class 5 minutes, have a question, quick conversation, go ahead.
Faculty member.
Quick question. Your professors, right? The people that are going to be instructing you in courses. Talk to them. They are people. Do not be intimidated by these. Also realize, say you're an engineer. They're here teaching you when they could be out in the world making way more money. I want you to think about that. Why would they be here doing that, right? Interested in working with. They like to do the research. Some may not show it so much. Some have been doing it so long, they're a little worn out, right? Get around those rough edges. Talk to these people, have a conversation. Go to office hours if you're not already. That's a great way for them to get to know you. And that's where you can ask, hey, I'm interested in research opportunities. Do you know anybody who needs a researcher? Once you get in that door, you might just be doing 10 hours a week or something like that. But if you keep doing it consistently, that's resume stuff. That's stuff you can put on there. That's stuff you can also turn into future jobs. Right? Majors next, right? It's number 3 out of 6 here. Majors actually decreased in importance over the years. It used to be like super important. You had to have this specific major to work at this type of job. Well, it's still the case in some areas. You can use rocket science as an example, right? I have a history degree. I can't go be a rocket scientist because I don't know anything about rockets, right? Or aero, astro, engineering. With that being said, with my history degree, we'll get into a role like this. I go to grad school, get a different degrees, but I never thought I'd be doing this. Matter of fact, I was on a trajectory to be an attorney. Started looking at the cost of that, said, nope, in a different direction. Here, though, is something that will help to prepare you for that. Holding a leadership position. Is anybody a leader within the veteran student organization here? Yeah, a couple of people have. I remember you from last year. It's good to see you. How'd you get? Yeah. One of the things that you're going to learn about leadership positions at student organizations here on this campus is the easiest way to get them is to show up. Show up. Show up consistently, open your mouth, share your ideas, raise your hand, and engage. Because I'm sure that plenty of classes this week where nobody but the instructor has said student work. They'll ask a question, nobody raises their hands. Pile on through. That's because everybody's afraid they're going to look weird in front of everybody else, right? You all have some experiences in your life, help you to transcend it, right? And I think you should leverage it. And I think it will help you. General work experience is next. You all got that covered. It's how you talk about it, right? I remember it's probably about 4 or 5 years ago now. I was working with somebody who had been a weapons officer on a frigate in the Navy. And their focus was guns, bullets, bombs, right? And they did not know how to translate that into civilian speaking on a resume. We spent a long time working on it, right? And what we ended up with was, again, those skills. They had to work with their team to solve problems. It definitely involved numbers, right? But it was how we talked about it. We focused on the skill aspect rather than the material aspect. So as you're looking at your own resumes and you have that experience in your background, right? Think about the skills that you utilize when you're working in those situations. Doesn't matter if you're working on a helicopter or if you're paving roads, right? You can talk about those skills that we discussed in such a way that's going to be appealing to your audience. Extracurriculars would be kind of the last one here. The way I think about this, you're going to go to this career fair next week, right? Maybe the week after. You walk up to somebody, say they're wearing a tie. That's bass. Maybe they're like bass fishing. Maybe you like bass fishing, right? All of a sudden, you have shared extracurricular. You can say, hey, that's a cool time, man. I'm a bass fisher too, right? And then all of a sudden, you're talking about bass and not necessarily the job. Who do you think they're going to remember from all those conversations that day? They're going to remember the person talking about bass, right? Now, that's an example that probably isn't going to happen. Nobody's going to be wearing ties out there, right? But look for clues. Listen for clues too, right? You'll be able to find things. Sports teams is a natural one, I think. You see some sports memorabilia or something like that, right? And you have a shared interest there, call it out. Right. The other thing is a lot of the folks that are going to be out at these events are also Purdue graduates. So you already have some shared experience. They know where you're coming from. They know the experiences that you're going to have or are having. Right. And that can be something you can lean on as well. Okay. Let's kind of get in here to know your audience. Any questions before I move on from that part? Yeah.
I'll just there, Kristen from the Maximus team just wanted to add to, get talking about skills.
Please.
She just had commented, soft skills are very important for success. Examples such as being a team player, emotional intelligence, active listening, tone, professionalism, work ethic, adaptability, even in body language.
Yeah. Oh, the body language piece. Can you talk some more, Kristen, about the body language piece? I know that's a little bit more difficult. I don't know if you've got audio, but we could potentially share that here.
Yeah, just kind of, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
We can.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, just kind of talking about, when you are, especially in these remote environments and we're doing a lot of Zoom, or even if it's face to face, your body language can say a lot more than your words. So it can be just as simple as, just a way you're shifting while someone's talking or moving your eyes that can really suggest, certain things toward employers. So those soft skills, just kind of almost like those natural skills in a sense, are really important to bring to the table, as well as, you know, education and experience. Those soft skills are vital.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up the remote environment. You know, we're streaming right now, right? We got a camera, there's plenty of folks here in the room too. What you will run across would be those interviews that are going to occur on Zoom first, right? That may be first screen interview. And what you're gonna find is, especially if you recording it, probably won't be able to, but I do encourage you to record yourself talking. You'll find those mannerisms that you're just not thinking about. My mannerism, I move my hands like a swat of flies, like all around, right? And I learned that in graduate school because I had a class where we had to record ourselves giving a presentation every single week, and then everybody critiqued it. It was painful, right? But that being said, it was one of those things where you start to learn about the body language, right? Eye contact is an important piece. There are things that I do as well that, like, I know I'm maybe a little bit nervous or maybe a little anxious, right? Might be like biting my lip, it could be like fidgeting with something, right? To really kind of help with that, you gotta be aware of it first, but it's also just kind of thinking about if you do find yourself nervous or a little anxious in that situation, give yourself a moment to take a breath, right? Calm down a little bit, center, you know, and then think about what it is you want out of that situation. Interviews can be very, they can make you pretty nervous, right? But practice is the way to overcome it. It takes a little bit of time. Okay, let's talk about knowing your audience. And Maximus team, please feel free to chime in on this one as well. Knowing your audience. The employer audience is big, right? There's a lot of different companies that come here. Actually, there's almost 2,000 companies that physically come to Purdue every single year. Which, if you think about that, is like huge, right? It's actually bigger than most of the Big Ten schools that we compete against. When I tell the University of Illinois, hey, we had 2,000 companies come to campus last year, they're like, what? Michigan's the same way, but you gotta get out there and you gotta find information. So what's the best way to find information about your employer audience? What are your thoughts?
Google.
All those things. Yeah, there's other steps to be taken here, though. Say you're on LinkedIn, go to their page, read all the stuff they wrote. You're reading. You're not really interacting with anybody. So visualize, right? You're on that company page, search them up, Maximus. You go right to their LinkedIn page. Down about halfway through the page, it says people, right? It'll be in kind of a list going across the page like this. Click on people. What you're going to get are two columns, right? One is where they live, one is where they study. And then you have a search bar in there. Say you want to go to Maximus and be a supply chain person, right? Type in supply chain, hit enter, boom. You've gone from maybe, I don't know, 15,000 people at Maximus, the whole company, down to the group of people that have supply chain somewhere in their LinkedIn profile. You can then go in there and start to look at, there you go. You can then start to find people and reach out to them directly. Hey, my name's Stephen Roach. I'm a sophomore here at Purdue. I'm studying supply chain info and analytics. I'm really interested in supply chain at Maximus, and I'd love to have a conversation with you. Here's my email address. Let me know. And what you're doing here is something called informational interview. You are interviewing them for information. Not everybody's going to respond. Not everybody's going to tell you yes. Right? But there just so happens to be millions and millions of people on LinkedIn. So you can find somebody who's going to say yes to you. All right, well, say they say yes, you set up that time to have that conversation. I would limit it about 30 minutes, maybe even less. Right? I would come with prepared questions too. What do you want to know from this person? Can you tell me what it's like to be a supply chain person at Maximus? So you would have done differently when you were getting your education. Got it, right? What are your top 3 tips for somebody who's looking for an internship in the supply chain field this fall? Right? Those 3. Just that, right? But there are 2 really important questions that I would add on to the end. So anyone else that you think I should talk to, can you help me get connected with them? Right? Because they might say, yeah, you know, thinking about your experience and your interests, I think I can get you connected with my friend. Great. How can we do that? Is it an email? Is it a phone call? Is it a text? Right? What that turns into is you networking out into these spaces because you ask the next person the same 2 questions. They get you. somebody else. All of a sudden, 3 months later, right, you have this big supply chain network of people who are professionals in the field. They might work at Maximus, they might not. But at Maximus team, please tell me what you think about this. Recruiters are going to pay attention to that kind of stuff. And don't hesitate to reach out directly to the recruiter. You have any comments? Some do, some don't. But research is the way you're going to find out information. So employer website, LinkedIn, social media, talking to people, of course. The next piece here is job descriptions. Who's looked at a job description this week? Yeah. What y'all think?
There's always a lot to it, so you just have to learn these out, important information, or like, verbs, definitely.
Like decoding a secret message, right? Sometimes they're real long, super complicated. They have things in there that have to include, right? It might be a human resource opportunity thing, right? So you have to parse it. What is it that they're actually looking for? And you made excellent point, verbs, right? If you go to page 18, 19 in the CCO handbook, there's actually a 2-page list of verbs. Right? That can help you to understand how skills equal verbs in a situation. So if you look at that job description and start picking out all the verbs, right, what's showing up the most, right? That can help you to understand what they think of as important. The next step, we're going to be going back to your resume and seeing how many times does that verb show up in my resume, right? Just showing up 2, 3, 4 times, great. Is it not in there at all? Well, how can I make changes to my resume and add that information to them? Job descriptions are going to be key there. And don't be afraid to use their language as well, right? I'm not saying like copy paste the whole, sentence from a job description into your resume, but use some of the verbiage, right? That's going to help you potentially get your point across. Yeah, I got these skills. I got this experience. There is an example of what I'm talking about here, but it's focused on cover letters. I think page 34, maybe 35, I'm not sure. Notice we've analyzed the job description, highlighted the key skills, abilities, and experiences that the employer is looking for. Now, we've related that back to cover letters because it gives you the same thing there, right? But if you pretend that your resume is in that place, you can compare those two documents pretty seamlessly. Okay, so quick resume tips. How many pages do you get?
Write these down.
One page. One page, not one page front and back, one page, right? I get students try and get that by me all the time. It's like, oh, we gotta flip the page. It's like, they're not gonna flip the page, right? You get one page, right? 5 to 7 seconds. That's about how long it's going to get attention. Now, I want you to think about why. If you look at resumes all day long, you've looked at a bunch of resumes. You have a lot of experience looking at resumes, actually. You can look at a resume and make a quick judgment. It's effective, this resume is going to affect. Look at it, and it's got references listed down at the bottom, it's 3, and that takes up like a quarter of the page, and then it just lists the jobs and has no information about the jobs. That's an ineffective resume. I've seen too many resumes like that this week. Right, but if you look at it and you see something that looks like the examples in CCO handbook, right, page 20 through I think like 31, that's more of an effective resume. That's going to demand more time. Right, to really understand what's going on. That's where you get into those questions. Yeah.
How do you differentiate yourself from the others that have, standard or like stand out resume?
That's where that personal interaction comes in, right? Being able to, again, what Christine shared with us, the body language, the mannerisms, the tone, the way in which you're approaching them, that's going to help you to define yourself, right? To stand out in that situation. And that's why these events are so important, right? You can't do, you submit your resume through their online portal, but when you're standing in front of them at the event, you can totally do that. Use the correct verb tense. I see this one a lot. If you're doing stuff in the past tense verbs. If it's happening right now, present tense verbs. If it's happening in the future, don't put it on your resume. It hasn't happened yet. It's important to understand that once you submit that resume, you're not going to get it back so that you can change it. Right? If you're predicting something that might happen in the future and it doesn't happen in the future, you may be misrepresenting yourself on the resume that you submitted. Right? So you want to go with present tense, past tense. Zero spelling or grammar errors. Been on a lot of hiring committees here and other places. I have absolutely worked with people in this room that would look at a resume and say, well, that's misspelled, dump that person. Right? Now, companies maybe not taking the same approach all the time, right? They understand the audience. But that being said, you can go through your resume and pick that stuff out. There's also some really good technology that can help with that. If we got time, we'll talk about that. Do not use templates, right? And the reason for this is, again, if you're looking at resumes all the time, you can glance at a resume and be like, yep, this is the Word template. That green bar, totally recognize that. Right? Templates stand out for the wrong reason. They're also really, really hard to format. So if you need to add things, if you need to change things, right, or run into this problem where it's formatted so much that it's really hard for you to move things around. But if you create a document from nothing, built it on your own, you totally own it, it's yours, right? You know exactly how to get in there and format it. So that when you add something or change something, it's not going to take you 2 hours. That's the input.
There are a couple, speaking of template, one of the in here said the template online for VMOC has 2 pages. So is there a way to upload a custom?
So the template online for VMOC that has 2 pages would be the graduate level ones. Graduate level resumes do have, I mean, we're okay with 2 pages for those. I still recommend a single page for even graduate level, that's master's or PhD. But sometimes, especially if you're looking at, say, research focused opportunities, you gotta have 2 pages worth of stuff, right? Academia is another really good example. If you say over at Zucro or something like that, you're probably gonna need to be rolling with like 2-pager because you're gonna do a lot of research. But then we get into this world of like, do I use a curriculum vitae rather than a resume? Right? And so it just kind of depends. But for industry in particular, I would recommend a single page.
And then to that point, another comment from Regan or Reagan, I hope I'm pronouncing one of those right. Earlier on in your career, it's best to keep it to 1 page and prioritize relevant experiences for college.
Totally agree with that, right? We come back to how long's the audience gonna look at it for, right? We don't have a lot of time. That's where that personal, social interaction can really come in handy, right? Transcend some things. Don't use pronouns. You don't have to, right? The resume is all you. So don't need my, we, they, their, right? Talking about your experiences, your skills. Now, often I'll hear, well, I worked with a group of people to do this and I don't want to cut them out. Totally understand that. Collaborated with a team to ... right? That's how you conclude that. Remember, you're not trying to get them a job, you're trying to get you a job. Right? Reverse chronological order, you want to go with the most recent experiences first, working your way back in time. This can be even section specifics. Say you got 3 sections on your resume, reverse chronological order, then you might have something here in the next section that happened before in your top section. So you're just going reverse chronological section or reverse chronological order in each section. And then consistent punctuation. If you're going to use periods, use them throughout. If you're not going to use periods, what I'll see often is a student might have an older version of their resume and they want to keep that content. So they'll copy paste it into the new version. Well, the old version had punctuation, the new version doesn't. Right? So they'll miss that. It's kind of a pet peeve for me. Again, I've just worked with those people that are like, yep, there's a period. None of the other ones have periods. This one's out. Right? And so you don't know if you're going to get somebody like that or not. Just want to cover your bases, right? Be consistent. Yes.
For reverse chronological order, what is, how does that work for jobs where you change roles within the job, but like there's gaps?
Really good question. So the way that I would handle that is you would have the name of the organization and then your title, right? You would want to go with the most recent title first, 2 to 5 bullet points under that title, right? And then another title below that would be bolded, right? Kind of the same format as the other title, 2 to 5 bullet points for that, right? The time period would add up and it would be apparent from looking at it that it's the same organization. There's actually some example resumes of that in particular within the handbook. You usually see that student organizations, somebody will be like treasurer 1 year and then the next year the vice president or something like that, right? So they'll break it out that way. There's a couple of different ways to do it.
Or United States Army, whatever, and then a staff sergeant, you were a squad leader, you were a et cetera, et cetera. Those bullet points and then the dates of those correlating dates. Whatever training or certificate you received, that would be relevant all under United States Army. I see it a lot when I'm working with all of y'all, like US Army crew chief, staff, whatever, and then a whole nother job description. US Army in Fort Campbell, et cetera, you can just blanks, just everything happened with the Army and all these job positions, all these hats I held happened there and it's relevant to this specific, industry that you're working in.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And, I think that helps you kind of cover all those experiences. It can be tough, especially working with one page, because you might feel like you're leaving really important things out. That just comes back to the audience, right? If you do that research, you can understand what's relevant to them, so you can pick and choose, right? But that also means that you're potentially going to have different resumes for everybody. So what I don't want you to think of that as is I don't want you to think of, I got to rewrite my resume every time I want to apply to a new job. Not the case. You might change a bullet point. Might change a couple of words in that bullet point, right? But it's going to potentially make it more relevant to that audience based on the research. Okay, so, well, I can't show you that example. Let's talk about the power formula and we'll close out on that. I want to definitely give Maximus time, or Maximus Crew some time to share some information. Pages 18, 19, again, the CCO handbook. If there's anything to take away from me talking with you tonight, it's those two pages. On the top left-hand corner on page 18 in particular is the power formula, right? Now, the power formula is pretty straightforward. You were starting every single bullet point with a verb, right? This on page 19 of words not to use. Responsible for is one I see all the time. Just remember, everything you do as a human being in this life, you are responsible for. You don't need to use it, right? I would use a better, stronger verb, right? And that's why we gave you a two-page list, right? So starting out with power verb, identifiable task is next. Some of you all can write very technical language. Read it. I'm like, oh yeah, all those words I know. So you gotta balance that, right? Because your audience needs to understand what it is that you're talking about. Sometimes you might talk to a very technical audience. Sometimes you're not talking to a very technical audience. So balance that so it's identifiable. And then purpose, method, or result. Purpose. Why did you do this? Method. How did you do this? Result. What happened because of what you did? I'm sorry, did I get the pages wrong? Was it 1920? Yes. Oh, no, it is 8. Okay. Yeah, it's top left-hand corner, right? That's where you find it. But purpose, method, and result. Every single bullet point, you need to answer at least one of those 3 questions. If you look at your resume tonight, you go through it and say, hey, if I answered at least one of these 3 questions for every bullet point, and you identify some that you haven't, add that information to it, you've made your resume more effective. Remember, your audience isn't going to take the time to guess. If you don't tell them, they don't know. So that being said, last piece about artificial intelligence. Does anybody use ChatGPT? I have. Still using it. Love it. ChatGPT 4.0 is Excel master. But that being said, what we're starting to see would be the focus for the generation of resumes. Right? In particular, resumes that are very focused, basically almost built off job descriptions. What do these lack? Well, they lack because you're like, here's the job description, and maybe my resume create something that's more focused, more tailored for this job description. And it'll just make up all kinds of stuff, right? Yeah. You don't want to misrepresent yourself. I still think it's an effective tool to be used in this situation, though. I think a better way to use it is to say, here's the job description. I'm interested in applying for this job. Here's my resume. Give me some instruction on how I can sharpen my resume, focus my resume for this job. I'm gonna give you like 5 to 10 bullet points of like, hey, you know, you talked about this in this bullet point. You might add information that's more related to this. That still gives you complete control over what you're saying and what you're sharing, right? But it doesn't take away from that personal aspect of you. And you're probably not going to misrepresent yourself. Right, what we also see would be the use of these large language models for cover letters. Here's the job description, chat GPT, write me a cover letter. Copy, paste, send, boom, done. Don't do that. Same approach as we just talked about with the resume. And you can do this with ChatGPT 3.5, which is free, right? You can say, here's the job description, here's my resume, give me 5 to 10 bullets on how to write an effective cover letter for this job. Yeah, good. Right. Will it eventually replace me as a career counselor? Probably. Hopefully by that time, I'll be doing something else. But I will say, do not be afraid to use this tech. Next couple of years, we're going to see it integrated into everything. Right? As a matter of fact, Microsoft has something called Windows Copilot. It's launching later this fall, right? And that is about $30 a month, I believe. And it is going to have access to all of the productivity software that they have. Right? So if you want to book a meeting and you're in Word, it will probably be able to look at your calendar and tell you available. So we're going to see this stuff continue to grow, continue to change. Right? Employers are also going to use technology like this. But questions from the online audience, input from the Maximus team, top.
I've got a few that I don't want to go unnoticed. Kristen also said, when applying for college internships, it's important to put your schooling with the grad date towards the top of the resume. So that's a great point. And then
All the examples in the handbook have.
Stephanie also added, I'd like to add that this is helpful. It's helpful to use numbers and metrics to help hiring leads understand the scope of your accomplishments and the value of your contributions. For example, you can mention metrics such as the number of people you supervise or the dollar value of equipment you manage or inventory you control. You can also display percentages or X amount of dollars saved from as a result of a process improvement.
Thing I'll add to that is I've worked with plenty of students that maybe sometimes can't talk about that type of stuff. There might be an NDA, there could be appearance issues and stuff like that. If you can't talk about it, that's okay. Right? It's trying to find things that you can talk about that aren't going to violate the terms, potentially get you thrown in prison.
One more coming in, but it's not there yet, so. But anybody in the Maximus Teams chat here, feel free to chime in, we can hear you guys, so.
So with, so I have a certification in personal training. Do I put that under my education? Do I put that under?
You've got some options there, right? Like if I was looking at a resume, again, you know, at the top, I have my name, my contact information, then the education section, expected graduation day, GPA, if you want to include it, you don't have to, full name of major, right? And then under that, usually I would recommend students have a skills section, but you can include skills and certifications, right? If you list your skills out, I would recommend going with hard technical skills in that space. If you put leadership, right, like it's not as effective as discussing your leadership experience in the bullets.
Yeah.
Right? But say you list, I don't know, Creo or you list, you know, MATLAB or something like that. If you list that hard skill, you have to talk about it in your experience. Because if you just list it, it's not effective. But then if you list the certification, personal training, right, down in the experience, I would also talk about your experience, personal training.
So you actually like write that out or you?
Yeah, you can list it.
You
You can list it as, you know, certifications, colon, right, and then personal training, just like that. And there are all kinds of certifications. Yeah, so you're just gonna spoken languages would be another really good inclusion space. Coding languages would be another really good one in that space as well.
I'd say too, like, if you know you have a certification in something, like, do I list it under an attribute because it might be useful in my future career, or do I list it as a skill or a certificate? It's most appropriate, I think, to really think about what your employer is looking for, right? So if you have a, what is it, in personal training certificate? If you have a personal training certificate and you're applying to work with people's physicalities in some way, shape, or form, really lean into that certification and your experience that you have that goes along with it. Not at all fine, you just need like side gig type deal, you know, you're delivering pizza. Maybe don't lean into your personal training certificate as much, right? Just list it, just display your ability to work with people, to guide people, etc. Does that make sense?
Just tailoring it
Yes, yeah.
to the exact job.
Right.
Can we get our resume specifically reviewed by you?
By me. So I have been promoted enough that appointments. And I actually have 3 resumes on my desktop right now. My first, can we get to these?
How much?
I was so free, man. You know, it's like right now, this is the third 14-hour day this week. If you send it to me, I'm gonna take a look at it. It just might take me months. But I'd be happy to. My email address, everybody, Roach, ROACH 23 at purdue.edu. Roach, just like the bug. But yeah, I mean, it will take me some time to get to it for sure, but that being said, I'm also the person that calibrated FEMA, so, it's been set up by me. So it does a pretty good job. I will say it, may be about to be replaced. Somebody that has better software for other price, so we'll see. We'll see. And it actually focuses on ATS stuff.
Could you? Yeah.
Roach, ROACH 23.
Perspective, okay. Stephen here, not to, you know, want to make your head go so big, but in all seriousness, Stephen is a wonderful colleague and super high up there with CCO. So this is, again, we value your time so very much. Probably it would be minimal in the times that you're able to set up one-on-ones with him outside of this particular workshop. Correct me if I'm wrong. But I just, again, you've got an expert here.
Working with y'all, and working with students in general is the whole reason that I started doing what I'm doing. And it turns out, like, do it long enough and they just keep moving out. And so, you know, that being said, if you email me though, and you're like, hey, I really need to talk, like, I'm gonna find 30 minutes. You know, so even if it's online, it's the whole reason I'm here. So, I appreciate your time.
Do you do a lot of, like, so I'm applying for graduate school. You do resumes that are tailored to that? Or should I student?
There's actually somebody in my office, her name is Dr. Emmett, and she focuses on graduate students in particular. But we used to still might kind of do it, grad school personal statement reviews.
Yeah.
Right, and that just took a lot of time for us, and it was challenging because you go through so many iterations.
Oh, yeah.
But that being said, yeah.
Absolutely.
I will say, I fairly recently graduated from Purdue University and I navigated this process, okay? And it really, really, really hit me over the head, to be honest. I was unprepared, like my resume was unprepared, and I wish while I was going through academia, I get how busy you guys are. You're on like hour 5 million of just being overstimulated, doing way too many things. I get it, I really do. But lean into these workshops, lean into pouring time into your resume, because before you know it, people will be asking and wanting you to be a part of their team. And you've got to be prepared for when that conversation happens, because I was wildly, just surprised at how little I hate to say this, but my academics really would propel me in my future. It really was about the experience I was having at that moment, the jobs and the relevant experience that I had, my ability to be a good leader and a good teammate, and then what I was interested in. So if you're able to really communicate that in your resume, you'll have something secured before you even graduate. I'm being very serious. Now, if you're applying for, graduate school, things like your GPA will absolutely matter, but I'm just talking about a entry-level position, which is what I was pursuing. And when I did that, I was very surprised how little they asked me about my capstone project, about my GPA. It wasn't even a requirement for me. So things like that were really important. Also, every single connection that you make, I was very surprised that like the network that you're making right now, you just never know who's going to be on your hiring committee. I'm being very serious. I was wildly just also surprised to be in front of a hiring committee of all people that I like had known. So leave every conversation that you have in really good hands, make really good impressions. And again, just take the time to do this stuff, because I promise it will absolutely do you well, okay?
I work with Morgan and she was a student. And it seems like it's forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she's absolutely right about like the conversations, the network connections that you make here, like these are people you're gonna run into, people you can rely on, and like 20 years from now.
Got a couple things in the chat I wanted to bring up. Regan mentioned she appreciates when people list their certifications in the education section of their resume. Kristen said if anybody would like the Maximus team to review their resume, they can provide their contact info, and they dropped like a flyer with their contact info.
Can
So
you email that?
I'm thinking that this is gonna be recorded and emailed en masse, so that'd be great.
Everybody takes advantage of that. So,
Yeah.
yeah. And yes.
It will like. So when I went to Duke, so I'm looking at going to Duke for physical therapy school. And they primarily wanted to talk to me about basketball. That was like coming from Purdue, that's the first thing they asked me about. Like, do I know basketball? Like, what? To what extent do I know basketball? And then, so how's Purdue gonna influence Duke?
Yeah.
And like, that is literally what they asked me.
Why did Purdue win the Big Ten championship with like immediately?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then Duke having a new coach.
Yeah.
How is that gonna influence like playing within the next 2 to 3 years whenever I go there? And so that is like literally what they asked me.
Someone once gave me a piece of advice, when finding the right employer, that if you yourself were to hire someone to be a part of your life right now, what kinds of things would you want out of that person? Would you want them to be super closed off, not social, like have nothing in common? No, right? You want someone that you can be comfortable around, and you also can engage their skills to progress your mission, right? That's one of the best advice that I've ever gotten, is just if you were to hire someone right now and then try to be that person. To really put it into perspective for me when I was a student, because all this talk about all these employers and things and benefits and questions and interviews, it's really hard to conceptualize, and then it's too late and you're in it, right? And then the last little thing I would say is that in interviews, and this is an interview piece of advice, but not resume, in interviews, have questions.
Yes. Yep.
I can't tell you, I've personally ran hiring committees now, and I so appreciate the questions that come from the potential candidate. Just even like, what's your favorite part of your job? Something as simple as that, or like, how's your day going? Things like that really show that that candidate is a touch more interested than the last 20 candidates that had no questions, okay?
All right, guys. Well, you got my contact. You know where I'm at. Hit me up. Definitely connect with the Maximus team. Maximus team, I really appreciate that offer. That's really great offer.
Fine. Also, you take all the pizza.
I would like to also mention that we are here for you. So therefore, like, if you guys have any questions, just bring it to Jay, me, yes, or Michael, whoever, and then we can try you. What you need, that's it. Yeah.
Just go something.
Yeah.
Was a couple years ago, when I was first flying here. It's been good. It made progress. It's up here. Yeah, I said.
Oh, yeah.